Flame trench digging continues at Massey's, Booster 4 remnants at Sanchez, engine install stand demolition at the build site, and GSC work continues at the launch site. Hi, I'm Jeff A, and as the weather improves, we are getting more and more incredible images from 10,500 feet. Let's sit back and take a look over here at Massey's rocket test facility. For reference, here's a mapped layout of the areas of interest at Massey's test site. Shout out to Procky for creating these maps for each of the 4 sites. First, let's take a look at this image taken in March of 2023, and compare it with the most recent image of this site. The changes are quite noticeable, aren't they? As always, we'll start at the static fire test stand under construction, where we can see excavation work is nearing completion. Moving down, we can see the concrete retaining wall is making its way toward the front of the site. We can now see that it steps down a number of times, supporting the theory that this is a shallow ramp. Over by the flat to work platform, a new structure has been delivered that could be part of the ship quick disconnect mounting frame. There are matching freshly delivered parts that could hold a horizontal frame high enough for SPMTs to run under. We speculate that this frame will span the trench on these extra embeds. Here's a render from Chrome Kiwi to give you an idea. Nearby, the old water treatment plant has vanished. Water that came from here will now be sourced from Brownsville. Shifting to the methane part of the tank farm, we can see that not much has changed since last week. Further concrete expansion has occurred with a hole for a pipe leading to the enclosed flare stack at the back of the site. Taking a quick look at the power and communications building, we see that new HVAC units have been installed on the roof. Scattered around the site, we see more green sections of piping have arrived. These will be used to supply water to the flame trench during static fire tests. Now looking at the static fire stand, we can see a walkway-like structure is taking shape round the perimeter of the stand. This is likely to give workers access to all sides of the ship. Nearby is what seems to be a horizontal cross brace for the stand that could even allow SpaceX to run SPMTs underneath and perhaps even transporting the ships from the build site, thus negating a need for a permanent crane here at Massey's to lift ships onto the stand as they have been doing so far at the launch site's Pad B stand. Shifting to the flame bucket fabrication area, we can see the second section of what we understand to be a 3-piece bucket has arrived, as well as the other parts that make up the supporting structure. Moving to the structural test pad, we can see a new leg piece has arrived, currently laying on its side, as well as circular connector sections. Taking a quick look at the mystery ring, we can see no further progress has been made since last week. Let's move on, shall we? Let's first take a look at a labelled map thanks to Procky. Once again, let's take a look back to March 2023, where Sanchez looked quite unorganised. As we shift to March 2024, the ground fabrication building appears, the core of the site has been cleared and covered in countless yards of concrete, and the air separation unit has disappeared. Let's begin our tour of Sanchez at the ground fabrication building, with what seems to be high pressure pipe week. In front of the building we see many long thinner pipe assemblies staged. To the side of the building, the hydraulic actuator being worked on last week is now retracted. Looking over to the ring assembly area, we continue to see minimal visible progress with the new booster transport stand. Just to its side, the second booster transport stand has finally received its alignment pins, making it one step closer to completion. Moving along, we notice several items have gone missing since last week. First, the mystery dome with the hatch has found its way over near the scrapyard and been placed on the B14.1 forward section, likely a test fit for its suspected purpose as a booster cover. Back along the container wall, the 2 white platforms and the 2 cylinders under the roof structure were transported to the taller side of the Star Factory, lending some evidence that these items may be part of a nose cone assembly structure or work platform. We move across the lane to see sections 8 and 9 of the next launch tower making further progress. Section 8 has some additional flooring placed on its upper level. The 9th section also shows signs of the mid-level floor being set. The roof beams are the last major structural element remaining on that section. Over at the scrapyard, we see remaining items of Booster 4 being loaded into dumpsters. Its 2 remaining grid fins stacked up nearby. Shifting just to the right, we see ship engine install stand components. In addition to the new components of stand 3, we see parts from the stand previously installed in Mega Bay 2. More about that to come later. The commodities farm looks largely the same, with some welding taking place under a series of tents. The rocket garden has seen the return of Booster 4's transport stand with what remains of its aft section, where we can notice the older design that lacks a LOX header tank. Across from the rocket garden, we see that the original engine install stand has been completely disassembled, with only its leg assemblies resting nearby. Finally, we visit the site of the parking garage where excavation of structural piles continues as crews work to prepare the structure's foundation. Let's now move over to the build site. Let's first take a look at the labelled map thanks to Procky. Let's also take a moment to look back 1 year to see how the build site looked before the mid-bay and the 3 production tents were removed. Compare it now to this week's flyover. Starting at the back of the site, we see some significant changes to Mega Bay 2 thanks to a well-timed photo. In the back left corner, we can see that the elevator shaft has been enclosed with cladding panels as high as we can see through the door. In the front left corner, we can see that the entire stand has now been removed from the bay. The work platform, ring and side panels were taken to Sanchez as previously mentioned, though the legs have not been located. We can also see that concrete has been removed from the area around where that stand was, as well as additional concrete removed around the back left station. As we shift left to Mega Bay 1, we see that the door is closed, though not quite all the way, as one of the Bronto Skylift trucks is being used inside. Inside, boosters 12, 13 and 11 were still on the workstations along the back at the time of this photo. As work at the launch site continues, on April 3rd a transport delay was scheduled and booster 11 made its way to the pad. Seen here leaving the build site by Labpadre's rover cam. The front left corner still holds the complete LOX tank of booster 14. In the front right corner, work continues on booster 14's methane tank. The next ring section, seen outside Mega Bay 1 last week, was stacked on March 27th, bringing it to 9 rings tall, with only the 4 ring section now resting in the left staging spot remaining to complete booster 14's methane tank. Over in the high bay, we've also seen some shuffling of ships following last week's static fire testing of Ship 29. To prepare for its return to the high bay, Ship 31 was lifted off its transport stand and placed on the turntable in the back left corner. Ship 29 would later be placed in the front right corner for final checkouts before it takes flight. It seems that the heat shield tiles suffered significantly less damage than previous vehicles during static fire testing. However, since arriving, it's been observed that many of the glued tiles on the tip of the nose cone have been removed, hinting at continued issues with the adhesion of glued tiles. Other notable work for Ship 29 will be the installation of the 4 Starlink antennas on its nose cone section. In front of the high bay on the left side is the 2-point lifter used for Ship 29 on its transport stand. Having been brought back to the production site, it seems to suggest that the next time Ship 29 is taken back to the launch site, it should be for full stacking using the chopsticks. Shifting focus to Star Factory construction, steel assembly continues steadily. Looking at the angled wall of the nose cone hall, we can see that the building has been framed to the front corner. As we move away from Highway 4, the wall has expanded to 11 columns, with only the last corner column remaining to be installed. Looking at the continued assembly of factory steel, the mid-level span has now reached the nose cone hall, with the parapet wall on its lower edge also being extended. The lower building is also making gains with another span in place, with only the last span to the Phase 1 building remaining. Additional concrete flooring has been poured on the ring yard end of the factory. In the corner of the factory site in front of the Phase 1 building, the new footing work we saw last week has been expanded to include some additional footings. We still don't see evidence of the final exterior wall along the northwest edge of the extension, suggesting it may continue further, possibly in front of the existing door, as we see additional drainage piping removed and some excavation work around the electrical vault seen near the corner of Mega Bay 2. Along the back of the Star Factory, we see new utility work with the installation of electrical conduits. Could this be the site of a permanent building to replace Tent 4? Let us know what you think in the comments. Turning our attention now to the office building, we see that they are wasting no time erecting structural steel for this building. The part we saw in last week's images has had continued work on its floor structure, with floor panelling being staged for installation of the 2nd and 3rd floors. The building structure has been continued around to the left wing, with the newly assembled lattice crawler crane staged to possibly take over construction on this side of the site. We see additional materials staged on nearly every side of the building awaiting assembly. Along the right wing of the building, we see foundation work approaching its end, with what appears to be the final footings at the end of the building. An additional elevator shaft is possibly taking shape near the long rectangular footing. We also see crews installing shorter formwork around the perimeter of this wing for the final wall structures. If we take a brief look at the village, we see that many of the homes under construction have taken additional steps towards completion. plenty of concrete continues to be poured as they work to fill in the previous solar farm site. Looking near the payload processing facility, for the third flyover in a row, we see that the frame structure, believed to be a cover for bridging between the Starlink loader and ship during loading, has been seen at the storage lot and Sanchez in recent weeks. Finally, along the strip of land extending past the payload processing facility, we see trucks being loaded with dirt that has been collected here over recent months. Keep an eye out for this green and white dump truck being loaded. It may be seen later in this episode. Let's now go to the launch site. Take a look at this labelled map to familiarise yourself with the layout of the launch site. Thanks again to Procky for providing these. Before we get started with this week's updates, let's take a look back at the launch site as it was in March of 2023. Installation of the flame deflector deluge system was in its early stages. The site was still largely running on generator power, and the launch of B7 and S24 was still a month away. Fast forward to the end of March 2024, and so much has changed. The orbital tank farm has gained 9 horizontal tanks and lost 2 of the original vertical tanks. Suborbital Pad A is no more, and preparations for the orbital launch pad number 2 are underway following the first 3 launches of the Starship full stack. Checking in on progress on the vertical drain installation process for the new orbital launch pad, one of the wick drain installers is moved to the narrow strip previously used for miscellaneous storage. Meanwhile, just next door, in the larger lot, dump trucks have been busy bringing in dirt to level over the drains already installed to speed up the consolidation process. Remember that green and white truck I mentioned earlier? It can be seen here pulling away after dumping a load of dirt brought from the lot behind the payload processing facility. The short drive should certainly speed up the process. Just beneath where the dirt is being levelled, crews are still working to tie rows of wick drains together for better drainage. It appears not many drains remain to be installed in this lot overall. Shifting our view a little to Pad B, we see it as empty once again as S29 has returned to the build site following its static fire campaign. After the LR11000 crane removed the ship from the stands during the daylight hours of March 28th, the temporary press plate was attached and the ship rolled back during the overnight hours into the 29th. Moving on now to the orbital tank farm expansion project, efforts are still underway to install new cryopipe and conduit to the new tanks. The small vertical tanks finally have a solid coat of white paint. Just to the left of the tanks where the green transformers were recently installed, it looks like additional concrete has been torn up to make way for electrical conduit to run from the transformers to nearby equipment. Also, 2 more large vaporizers arrived on March 26th, seen at the bottom awaiting installation. Before moving on, we see a fresh concrete pad has been poured up near the old booster staging pad in the centre of the site. While some tanking and burst tests have been performed in this location in the early days of the Starship program, this pad hasn't been used for anything substantial since then. It's not clear why it was torn up and replaced, but that's to be expected with SpaceX and most concrete work at Starbase. On the backside of the orbital tank farm near the wetlands, some additional concrete work has happened since our last flyover. The bulk of the green pipe work that was exposed next to the big berm in our last video is now covered, with additional concrete pours expected to extend the slab around the rear of the berm. Over at the launch pad, several scaffolding platforms have been raised to assist with inspection and repair of the OLM legs. The primary flex hoses inside the BQD hood were replaced on the 29th, followed by cover reinstallation on the 30th. There haven't been any signs of hold-down clamps or QD replacements since the launch, which is a good sign that work to improve robustness of the pad is progressing well. Lots of work to tidy up electrical and hydraulic lines on the chopsticks and tower have been occurring in recent weeks too. The surge to get B11 onto the OLM for flight readiness testing is evident, and we won't have to wait much longer to see it happen. With a 12-hour testing window scheduled for April 5th, the next 33 engine static fire is imminent. As B11 entered the launch site late April 3rd, missing from the top was the hot stage ring, which, at our last glance, was stationed behind the high bay. The lift onto the OLM occurred just before sunrise on the 4th, with the chopsticks rising to the parking position near the top of the booster shortly after. Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Starbase Flyover Update. If you want to support our weekly flyovers, consider becoming a channel member or subscribing to the RGV Aerial Photography Patreon, where you'll get access to our exclusive flyover gallery and other cool perks. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week. That's all for now.